Lately, DHS, FEMA, and others have been emphasizing the training and planning for complex coordinated terrorist attacks. The reason is terrorist groups don't sit idle. They work on their efficiency at killing. The individual jihadist has become battle-tested in places like Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. As a group, terrorist organizations study their attacks in US and Europe, and they take best practices and lessons learned and they pass them along to their followers online. The number of and lethality of attacks has been on the rise. In the last episode, I told you counterterrorism is not all SWAT teams and door kicking, but sometimes it needs to be. Grab your seat. It's time for Counterterrorism Roll Call. Welcome to Counterterrorism Roll Call. I'm Holt Clark. A complex coordinated terrorist attack is a synchronized attack executed by two or more semi-independent teams working in coordination with each other. This coordination can occur before the attack, during the attack, or in some cases both. In these attacks, multiple locations are hit in close succession by multiple well-trained teams. Typically, they're focusing on soft targets. Now, these attackers can communicate effectively across teams by using media or social media to adapt their operations on the fly. Now, the purpose for the coordinated attack is to hinder a full or overwhelming response by law enforcement or other first responders. It can happen in different sectors, precincts, districts, or jurisdictions. The terrorists don't care about our boundary lines. Now, the signs have been pointing over the last few years of these types of attacks increasing. The attacks are getting worse. The terrorist groups are getting better at what they're doing, and they're changing tactics. They're becoming more efficient. The war in Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq is training thousands of battle-tested veterans. Between January and June of 2015, there were 11 occurrences where terrorist attacks killed more than 100 people in one day in one country. Now, two of these happened in Iraq, one was in Kenya, 3 in Nigeria, 4 in Syria, and 1 in Yemen. But all of them provided lessons learned and best practices that were used in November in Paris. Now, the global jihadists are encouraging these attacks. They're using them as a way of adapting their tactics, of training their followers, and directing the attacks. If you read their online propaganda like Rome Magazine, there's a section on military and covert operations. And you'll see by reading through these sections, they do not distinguish between ISIS troops fighting against Assad's forces in Syria and a suicide bomber killing teenagers at an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. They view both as military operations. How has this tactic evolved? Terrorists have always fought an asymmetrical type of warfare. They use criminal activity in a war zone, and they use warfare tactics in a civilian environment. If you look at the armies of Syria and Iraq, they're conventional armies designed to fight conventional forces. The terrorists like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra fight an unconventional warfare of car bombs, suicide bombers, and attacks on civilians. They've adopted guerrilla and terrorist tactics. The adoption and adaptation of these techniques are seen in Europe and other locations. ISIS in Syria uses suicide bombs to open access to guarded gates of military bases. This same tactic was used in Brussels in the Brussels airport attack. Now, they don't view you, law enforcement, as an equal enemy combatant, but as an obstacle to avoid as long as possible. You will be necessary in the end to help them achieve martyrdom. But the attack is less likely to be a police station and more likely to be a highly populated civilian event. Now, let's look at some examples that illustrate the hallmarks of a complex coordinated terrorist attack. The first is Mumbai, India in 2008. Lashkar-e-Toiba is a Pakistani Islamic terrorist group. They made simultaneous multiple attacks occurring in hotels, cafes, metro stations, hospitals, a Jewish community center, and other places. These were shootings, bombings, and even arson. The attack lasted 4 days, And the terrorists had been trained in Pakistan in a marine warfare camp in the mountainous regions. In 2016, in Brussels, the airport and a metro station were simultaneously attacked by ISIS followers. This was a complex coordinated terrorist attack inside of a complex coordinated attack. They used tactics they learned in Syria to break through security areas to get deeper inside the airport during their attack. Probably most famously is Paris in 2015, where Paris and one of its northern suburbs, Saint Denis, was attacked by ISIS followers. There were 3 suicide bombers that detonated outside a stadium during a football match, and it was followed by several mass shootings and suicide bombers in cafes and restaurants. Then gunmen carried out another mass shooting at the Bataclan Theater, leading to a standoff with police, which is exactly what they wanted so that they could become shaheed or martyrs during their attack. Now, Benghazi, September 11, 2012, is an excellent example of a coordinated ground attack by terrorist commanders. The New York Times reported one anonymous special operator as saying that the terrorists used individual movement tactics, cover and move. One guy was shooting while one guy was running. The bosses on the ground were pointing and commanding and coordinating. Now, here in the U.S., we're much less likely to see this type of full military attack. But be prepared for these tactics. They're either going to be Syrian trained veterans or people directly trained by these veterans. How will your agency prepare for a complex coordinated terrorist attack? It could be everything from minor changes to existing plans to major updates in your basic procedures based on this type of an attack. It's tactical and it's strategic. From a tactical perspective, we're looking at training and equipment, maybe long guns or higher levels of ballistic protection. From a strategic standpoint, it may be rules of engagement. It may mean who and how we respond. But the number one thing you can have is a plan. That plan has to recognize, notify, and alert that a complex coordinated terrorist attack is occurring or may be occurring. You can't send all your resources to the scene because there may be a second, third, fourth scene. You may want to temporarily suspend non-emergency traffic because you're going to need all of your resources. Remember, this is not just a law enforcement event. Fire, EMS, rescue, and others are involved. You may want to build on existing plans. Does your active shooter plan have a rescue task force team? That's something that you can work on with complex coordinated terrorist attacks. Is 911 well integrated into this plan? Can they screen and prioritize the calls? Do you need to send a supervisor in there for those duties? Are your supervisors trained and practiced in area command? Remember, the terrorists don't respect your boundaries or your city's jurisdictions. Keep in mind that complex coordinated terrorist attacks are part of a targeted effort of the global jihad to improve on their techniques and increase the lethality and effectiveness of their attacks. Counter tactics and strategies must be a part of your efforts. Individual officers have to be aware, trained, and equipped. Supervisors have to have a strategic understanding. Agencies have to have a plan. Jurisdictions have to coordinate, train, and exercise together. Until next time on Counterterrorism Roll Call, be alert and be safe. Thanks for watching. Please visit our sponsor, PatriotThreads.org, and stay tuned for a special offer from them. Would you do me a favor and hit the like button? And if you haven't yet, subscribe. If you want to know more about me, go to my website, follow me on Twitter, or just run me on NCIC. I'll see you next week on Counterterrorism Roll Call. Until then, be alert, be safe. PatriotThreads.org is apparel with a purpose. Patriot Threads offers state-themed, game day to outdoor lifestyle apparel, like the new line of Southern Trout shirts, and introducing the new Back the Blue shirts. All are 100% printed in the USA. Are you looking for a new, exciting, profitable fundraiser? PatriotThreads.org would love to help. Go to their website for details. Use promo code ROLLCALL at checkout and you can save 20% on the sale. And Patriot Threads will donate 20% of the profits to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. PatriotThreads.org is a proud sponsor of the men and women of law enforcement.